Gator County REMC member owners contesting for recent elections, specifically districts 5 and 6. On the approval of the agenda, there were a couple changes. On item 7, we tried to get survey and ballot to be online tonight, but they were unable to. So we're going to go with the review the survey and ballot contract, and the Credential and Election Committee will contact to discuss questions. The number 8, schedule a follow-up meeting for August 4th. Aaron's not going to be available, so we're going to push that back to the 11th. I know that goes past the 30-day requirement in the bylaws, but if you guys are okay extending that a week, I would like to stay with our consistent with legal counsel.
Is it possible to change the time on that?
Yeah. Well, what time would you like?
Is that a Wednesday?
Yes.
7 or later would 7 with
7 okay? Is 7 okay with everyone? Here. Yes. Yes, with those 2 changes, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the second line of action is the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the meetings.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 3, we had originally, as a Credential and Election Committee, had worked with Robert Wickens or Wickens and Wickens. There was some concerns, and Steve and I went up and met with Aaron a week ago Monday. The thing that I wanted to get was that legal counsel was representing the corporation that she represents, correct? Or if you want to
Yes.
reword that.
Well, when an attorney represents an entity, corporation, the attorney represents the entity itself.
Perfect. So based on policy bulletin 1-6C, services of consultants, we have never approved Aaron to be our legal counsel. And I would at least like to vote on that for the Credential Committee, and then I'll leave that up to Steve on how he wants to handle it for the full board.
Could you say that again? I missed.
On the policy bulletin 1-6C, services of consultants. Since I've been on the board, I do not remember ever approving any legal counsel. So I don't believe Aaron.
I would note that I've worked with Decatur County IMC in a lot of different capacities and on many different issues, labor negotiations and contract review and corporate matters, things like that. So.
No, I know you're very familiar with it. Perfect. I just want to go by the policy. So where the board approves you to be our legal counsel. So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay. Review of the bylaws. Suzanne, would you read those, please? 3.06, 3.07, 3.08.
Section 3.06, nominating committee duties. The nominating committee described in section 4.04 shall self-advise of the direction to be elected at each election and shall investigate prospective nominees with the view of obtaining qualified persons, proper representation, members geographically, numerically, without regarding to race or creed. Nominate at least one person from each expiring or vacant directorship for the next annual meeting at least 90 days prior to the annual meeting. Prepare and post at the principal office of the REMC and cause to be published in the REMC newsletter at least 60 days before the annual meeting, a list of nominations for directors. Count all ballots in any election and other voting matter with the assistance of REMC employees and other agents of the cooperative. Rule upon the validity of any ballots or other voting issues on the day of the election. Section 3.07, Members of the board of directors who are not standing for election at an annual meeting shall serve as the Credential and Election Committee. The committee shall approve the manner of conducting of the election, including registration, ballots, and the voting proceedings. Rule upon any questions that may arise relating to the member voting and the election of directors and other voting issues after the day of the election. This includes but is not limited to the validity of the petitions of the nomination or qualification of the candidates and the regularity of the nomination of the electors of the directors. Section 3.08, a protest or exception, a protest or objection concerning any election or voting matter must be filed with the Credential and Election Committee within 3 business days following the adjournment of the meeting in which the voting is conducted. A protest or objection shall state in writing the reasons for the objection or protest and shall be signed by a member. Can we continue with the 3.08?
You got one more paragraph in 3.08. Yeah.
The Credential and Election Committee shall meet 7 days after the protest or objection is filed. The committee chairperson shall give notice of the meeting. The committee shall be evidenced as presented by the protesters or objectors and any candidate affected by the protest. These persons may be heard in person by counsel or both. The committee may require that witnesses testify under oath and make other rules for the proceeding. The committee may not affirmatively act or any other unless the majority is present. The decision of the committee shall require a majority of those present, but not less than 4 votes. The committee shall, with reasonable time, but not later than 30 days after the hearing, render its decision. The committee may affirm for the election, change the outcome thereof, or set it aside. The committee's decision on all matters covered by this section shall be final. If the election committee cannot reach a decision, then the full board of directors, less directors whose positions would be affected by the decision, shall make the decision.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the member owners.
Let's start out spokesperson for us. The question is, we give you the list. We filed that on Wednesday morning. Can we add, or we've kind of worked on it, modified it? Can we present that to the Credential Committee? Some of those overlap. But
Well, you filed the protest, so, and you're here to make your case. You don't have to, you've already protested, so go ahead.
okay,
Talk about what you need to talk about.
all right. Well, I'm going to hand these out to the Credential Committee. And I guess county.
Here's one.
Okay, next one. I need one for Jason.
Here's 2.
Good too. Third. I'm a county, right? I'm trying to leave you out. Guess I'd like to go over the points here that what we really feel like is that this is basically stalled. And we've been working on this since February, asking about the nominating committee to be involved. And at this point, it's never occurred. And we really think that that was taken care of. It would be real simple to move forward on it. Question being, McKinney figures out that the nominating committee, during the nominating committee at the election evening, he asked the SPS representative if they could send the election results for 2021 and 2022. The response to Kenny was, yes, we can do that. It only costs you the shipping. And he said he was more than willing to do it. So the question becomes, from the reading of the bylaws, the Credential Committee is in charge of the elections and how things go forward. What we don't understand is that Friday night, Kenny gets asked the question, it's okay. Steve on Monday responds to Kenny at one-on-one saying it's not allowed. I'm not sure, we're not sure how that can be an official response when we're really talking to the credential committee to make that decision as a whole. Now, Steve being active interim at that point in time, I understand, but he's also meant a part of the credentials. But where or why that decision was made, when they were more than willing to do that, I guess I go to the legal counsel is what did we ask that was wrong or insufficient, or why would be turned down when they were willing to ask the SS's part to do that?
I think you guys need to also read into we don't need to read it all out loud, but section 3.05, because that is really the crux of this. Section 3.05 is where the board established back in 2018 how the elections were going to be handled. And the board made certain decisions for the corporation, which is what the board does. And in section 3.5, it made a whole lot of decisions, which if you guys want to read it out loud, you can, but really not necessary. But in particular, the board decided that early voting would be authorized, remote voting would be authorized, and the board reserved for itself the authority to decide how the early voting would happen. And so those decisions are appropriately board decisions because back in 2018, they made that decision and they wrote it into the bylaws. Other things that are not related to the decisions the board made in section 3.05 about voting are properly within the jurisdiction, if you will, of the Credentials and Elections Committee. And so I think the point here is that the board decided that it was going to use survey and ballot systems. They decided they would use a vendor. They decided how it would work. And that decision was not changed by the board. The full board would need to change that decision. I would also say that it's really, generally speaking, it would be best practice to have these conversations about how the voting would occur and how the annual meeting would occur, like now, for next year. This is a fantastic time for the board to decide whether it wants to make policy decisions about 2022. And, you know, absolutely, if the board wants to consider the input and opinions of the members, that is very appropriate. It's not a great time to do that 2 months before the election or 4 months even, because there's a timeline. So I guess that's the answer to your question, is that this was and it still is a board decision until the board makes a change in how it's going to conduct the elections.
So what is it? So then going back to the Credentials Committee, has all their power been removed by 3.05?
Anything that's set forth in 3.05 has been decided by the board, and anything that's not addressed in 3.05 would be fall to the Credentials and Elections Committee to make a decision in a case where there's a protest or an election. I would guess, but I wasn't part of the drafting, but I would guess that the intent of the Credentials and Elections Committee was really to address a situation like this, where a member raises a concern about election or the credentials of a candidate on an after the fact basis. But that's just kind of speculation. But the way the bylaws are written, the board has made decisions about voting, setting that out in 3.05, and that's board decision. Again, the board can change those decisions. That I want to make that clear. The board can have policy discussions and have a debate, which you guys have been having for 4 months. I know that, and make different decisions going forward. I would advise you to do it, in the next few months if you want to make changes, because they take time to implement.
So subject to 3.05, can the board approve or disapprove them receiving the ballots by mail?
Well, the question is now before the Credentials and Elections Committee. If you're talking about the next year, then you need to, as a board, figure out what you guys want to do next year and clean up the bylaws if they need to be cleaned up. I mean, The board makes the decision about how that is going to happen. And the board did make a decision about that last year, 2021. The board can make a different decision next year for 2022.
Is there a conflict of there of what the job of the nominating committee versus the 3.05 versus, I think it's 3.07, about the nominating committee's job? Their primary thing enlisted in their part of the bylaws is to count the ballots with the assistants.
Well, I don't think there's a conflict. I don't read there to be a conflict, and I would submit to you that your primary job the nominating committee's primary job is to nominate candidates. And I understand that there was language specifically added in here when the board back in 2018 approved early and remote voting to make it clear that nominating committee's job was changing because there wouldn't be only in-person ballots anymore. So I think that we need to move past that. I'm not sure really, to answer your question, no, I do not see it. That's my opinion. And I understand that other people, you guys may be reading it differently, but no, I don't see a conflict.
Fine, I guess it's all interpretation, everybody's situation. As far as our group, still asking for a credentials committee to secure all ballots from SBS 2020, 2021. Let the nominating count them, verify them. We are not changing our mind as asking credential committee to consider that. Going forward to be able to do that. I guess others, number 3 on my listing there, stating that one of the things that's always been stated by all the board members and everybody is that we want to make sure everybody has a fair chance to vote. We don't know, have never been notified that I know of how many votes that arrived at SBS after the date, either because it was mailed late, postage issued, or whatever. They have said that they collect those ballots for 30 days after the election closes. We are right on that time period of 30 days. I think that would be something, as we talk about your point going forward to 2022, to take a look at that, to know what those numbers are, because that's a critical thing going forward for the credentials committee as you go forward, thinking about the job of the SBS to do it. That's fine. But a critical factor is it's not on SBS's fault. It's the US mail. How many people are we? I don't know, but it would be a good bit of information to find out. When the elections are as close as they've been, I think it's a very valid point for everybody. So until we ask for those and know what those are, guessing. No reason to guess. They collect it. Seems like that would be something that the credentials committee, whether they use it for 2021 or going forward, is a key bit of information that we need to know to represent the membership correctly. I've got something I contacted SBS myself on behalf of another organization back in March. Earl didn't even speak there. This is the direct correspondence that I had with SBS on an email asking questions of how procedures are handled. You can read that. I would like, when we're all done this evening, that I'll reselect these. But this was an email of me asking questions, trying to understand what it might cost for other organizations I'm involved with, what it would cost and how things are handled. I think page 2 has got all the answers from SBS. And let me say, SBS was first class to me when I asked questions. They were very responsive. They were very good. I have nothing negative that I'm saying about SBS. I'm just saying, here's the questions I asked and the response I got. I will direct you to number 6 on page 2 there. And it says, because I was asking about a survey, because they survey or ballots, they do either one, okay? One of my questions that I asked, I said, are we able to see the results of the surveys as they come in on the online, so we see the trend of the survey before the closing period. The answer was, yes, you can track the online portion in real time. Okay? Page 3, follow-up question. To answer all the ones that I asked above, the same basic questions I ask about surveys, do they also respond, are the same answer for elections? If that was something that we consider in our jury. The answer was yes. With that information being said, I think it's a real concern here. If they're saying that, I don't know what the contract said. But in other words, if there's any chance at all, those numbers are known from the election. They're not denying it's available, then there could be a real issue. These are just naked questions that I ask on my own. Okay? Didn't involve anybody here, anywhere else. I was looking about other organizations. And so I feel like that is a real concern going forward of how it's handled. I guess I got the question prior to SBS. We had election. We had no idea how many people was going to show up for the election. And now we have SBS. We got a daily report of how many, daily or weekly report of how many people voted. Is that truly what we want? It leaves a lot of holes in there, looks like to me, for a secret ballot, because if we look back in the bylaws, it is a secret ballot. So fire any questions at me, Credential Committee, that's fine. I'll be trying to
The
answer.
SBS should be here tonight,
Had nothing,
and not 3 hours before the election or the meeting time to try and get them here.
and like I said, I had nothing to do, this was not an REMC project. This is Gordon Smiley project, okay? And there's lots more questions that could be asked, but that was a general response, okay? I'm not trying to here to point fingers, but I'm just looking at it. If I wanted to know from our survey from someplace else, I would know online, I could know real time what would the reports were. So it brings up a question, okay? And when it brings up a question like that, I look at the Credential Committee, we all do, sitting here and say, what other things don't we know? We haven't been able to get information to know what really occurred. So we as members, owners, are asking respectfully, let's find out.
Anything else from your group?
Good. I would just, Beth, I would like to basically address the committee. And when this started about asking about a contract in February, why can't a director who's the most powerful person in the REMC, when the director asks the CEO for a contract, why is that not given? How can that not happen? How is the CEO more powerful than the boss and the people who hired him? How is that? It's got a lot of problems with how the director comes and asks for something and has a legitimate need or concern. And this is February, elections in June. And, you know, we're being told it's too early. You don't need it yet, or just excuse after excuse after excuse. And to my knowledge, it was a rough draft or proposal. It wasn't the actual contract. And still to this day, I'm not aware that there was ever a contract handed to a director of SDS. I find that alarming when directors, this is a very important role. There's 8 people that run and make the policies and execute the business of the REMC and set the CEO into action to do day-to-day job. You 8 are the hierarchy. You are the top. And you're being told and directed by your employee what to do. I'm sure that wouldn't function in a lot of other businesses that way. I stumble when I see, it just bothers me when I see the directors not taking the leadership of this REMC, our REMC, the one that we own, altogether. That's why we hire you. That's why we vote for you. Why we put you in charge to get the right people. I would just like to see the directors be directors. If you all great men, you all have a need or a want to be in this thing.
And women.
Women, pardon. But that's my concern. That's from where I'm sitting.
Carl,
And good people.
Carl, you did get the copies of the contracts that you asked for when you asked for them, correct, or no?
And I'm not sure if it's a full contract of SBS.
So in the correspondence on the email, Jeff, you indicated that we had not received a signed copy. It was in the board packet this month.
I believe you're asking me a question, correct?
It's in the board packet. It's not a question. I mean, we can pull it up right now and look at it.
I believe
It was signed in December.
I believe there's discrepancies in the proposal that we were given versus what SBS conducted. And that's why with everything,
Okay.
and this is where I have to walk the fine line because everything is stamped confidential. And that's where I want to talk with SBS, with all of us and Aaron present to find out what is confidential, because I don't want to say something tonight that's confidential because every page is stamped that way.
Okay. So
There are discrepancies in what SBS,
you did know that.
yes,
There are discrepancies.
versus what is in this proposal. Yes.
So what is the basis, if I can ask you guys, for the contesting of the election? Other than you're not satisfied with SBS. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want you to tell me. Why are we contesting the election? This is a kind of hearing, right? You're supposed to persuade us, go to the next level. So persuade us. Because so far, I've not heard why we're actually really contesting it.
I'll start by saying, I believe one of the results was very, very, very close, almost 1%. I would think that I can't tell you the number of invitations I get from chemical companies, business meetings, that I get them after, you get them after the mail, after the meeting's over. You find out 2 days later. I just think that we should be able to see if all this stuff is being passed down minute by minute, and there's still ballots out that come in. We should be able to see that.
We would have to like,
You're talking about, 1%, virtually 1%.
so for you, that warrants a recount. Does SBS have that same opinion? You were in the meeting with SBS on that Friday night. What did they say? They're not here. I can't ask them.
They said they were 99% accurate, but that is still their opinion. And they had no problem with sending the ballots down. And there was 2 lawyers and the rest of the nominating committee sitting there. Nobody had an issue with it. So I really don't know what the problem is.
So why would we send ballots back from an election period which we are not contesting? You asked for them for the last 2 years. You're not contesting the 2020 election,
Don't send them back then.
but that's not what you asked for. You asked for both years.
We would,
And the bylaws specifically state that you cannot count ballots after the deadline, period.
okay, I made a mistake. But why can't
I can read them to you, Gordon, if you don't believe me, but they specifically say that in this kind of a process, you cannot count ballots after the deadline. That's why it's a deadline.
I understand, but it's very, yeah, I understand your question. I wasn't understanding it. The point being, it's very critical to you guys to know how many ballots did we exclude?
Okay, so back to my original question. Why exactly is this election being contested? Jay gave me an answer. How about everyone else?
because it's close. Why not? What do you have to hide?
I don't have a damn thing to hide. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay, then what's the issue then? Of sending them down here?
Well, SBS has a threshold You stated a moment ago, 99.
SBS told me they had, and I quizzed them. I said, I'm not here to insult you. I just asked you, is this a problem? Absolutely not. Sandy was sitting right there. Two lawyers were sitting there. If you thought if somebody had a problem with it, SBS or someone in that room would have said something, but nobody had an issue with it. It really surprised me when I got your note that time and said Ben denied. I thought, what did I overstep here? I mean, I was very polite about asking.
So the request is to send the ballots back to whom and how will they be handled? There were multiple requests. One was for them to be sent back. The next one was for it to count 30 days after. This is in your letter. You're rolling your eyes at me. This is what you wrote. You want the ballot sent back from 2020 and 2021, first of all. Second of all, you want all the ballots sent that were received up to 30 days past, and then the nominating committee would decide whether they were valid or not. That's what you wrote.
The nominating committee, you don't trust them either then? And we're going to do it in Wickens' office.
I think they also stated it would be done in Wickens' office. So let's include that too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. So again, we're going to spend more money, but go ahead.
I don't know how you feel that because
You think the Wiccans are going to do that for free?
pardon me?
You think they're going to do that for free?
You haven't, all they want is pay the fee, pay the postage down there. That's all SBS wanted.
SBS, what about Wiccans? You think you're going to do that in his
You
office?
spend money around here like drunken sailors anyway, and pieces of it, so what's the big deal? You accused us of costing you, what, 17,000? And then I heard the number, it's gonna cost another 30 for the contestant or whatever.
I have no idea. I didn't hear that.
Your CEO told me that.
You talked to him more than me then, because I don't know that.
He calls me 8:30 at night. Animated. Don't need that.
Excuse me? Called you at 8:30 at night regarding the election?
He was upset that we were contesting the election. Animated. Lasted for Wednesday, 8:26 PM, June the 16th. It lasted for 37 minutes and 28 seconds. Animated. He was on vacation. Couldn't believe we were asking for recount, 99.9% accurate. I asked him, how does he know that? And he says, well, that's what they say. And I said, well, I'm okay with being wrong. I would like them to, it's a close election. I would think that you would want the ability to see and face all the owners as being named directors and could look them in the eye and say, you know what, this was close. You know, let's do it. Let's just try it once and see what happens. And then from the rest of the time on, you can have proof and you can say, look at that. We had a close election. I think we'll just recount them. And then you've got something to stand on. You've got a little hill to stand on. We're just asking for.
I agree with you, Jay. I also asked Jeff for this to be an open meeting. And I see 1, 2, 3, 4 members here that aren't signed letters. So how did those members get invited and no one else?
I think I responded back that it was an open meeting for all
You did. So how was that notification sent?
through the email that was everyone was on copy.
So these 4 received that email, but none of the other members did?
I did not send that email to those 4. I listed the names that I sent the email to were listed that you requested.
If you're going to have an open meeting, an open hearing, then I suggest that the members be informed because Jay's absolutely right. Members absolutely have a right to know that this is going on. They might be interested. SBS isn't here. Members weren't notified. That's why I asked you in the email, is this a hearing or not?
And I apologize for the meeting/hearing that I do believe we need to listen so we can go forward.
Absolutely. That's why I'm asking them questions.
My
because
question is to Jay, when did you receive that phone call?
June 16th.
8:26 PM, lasted 37, 28 seconds. Brett, I don't believe was in a good state of mind. He was on vacation. Never talked to him and him been so animated and excited and pointing a finger at me. Couldn't believe that I would be part of a group that wanted to question that. And I simply told him, I said, if I was on this committee or if I was on this board, I would not have a problem with it. And he kept throwing out the number 30,000 and I asked him how he knew 30,000 was the number. You gonna make the number 30,000 when it's all done? I asked him that. And I kept repeating, I didn't have time to respond to him because he was so elevated and agitated. And I put animated down as one of my notes here. And he said that this group has never come up with one good thing except for flushing the old stale board members off. Nothing we've ever done good for the RMC.
And what day was this? I'm sorry. What day?
Wednesday, I was spraying corn. And I actually quit spraying in order to talk to him because they was had an earpiece and bells and ringers, everything's going off. So I stopped just to handle him. And I thought it was a phone call that was totally out of call. And once again, your employee is making some judgments that he seems to not make good sense with, in my opinion.
So is that the reason you're contesting the election?
I'm contesting.
I'm back to that.
My question before you go there is who notified Brett about this?
So Jay, before we move forward, just out of curiosity, other than REMC, do you have like a personal or like a friendship with Brett that would, do
Excuse me?
you have like a friendship with Brett outside the REMC that maybe would,
No.
okay, just, just if you were mutual friends, I'm just curious.
Times
So
over there,
other just through REMC is how you know him?
he's wanted information about.
Because I'll be honest, I'm not contesting this election at all, and I am not questioning any integrity of SBS in any way, shape, or form. My question is the involvement with the nominating committee starting way back at the beginning of the year. If that contract was confidential and items rendered confidential, black it out and give it to the committee that's requesting it, who's in that. Give that, because that would have taken care of a lot of board meetings and a lot of our time if they would have just given it. And I agree with you, Jay, it's kind of sad and it's a little embarrassing that we cannot get the documents and or request other than it has to go through other facets and or I'm not included in some of those. And I just don't understand how Rachel has the communication and contact with SBS. I can see her administrating or assisting, but I think that nominating committee also needs to be a part, that she needs to be a part of that too. But I am not contesting the election or the integrity of SBS at all, and or how I don't have enough information, whether it's right or wrong on SBS. I have no reason to question SBS or how they've done it.
Personally, I think this is a good thing for the board. I think it would be a good exercise in all the years to go through with it and see what it's like. And you would have a more educated answer for what about the late mail-ins? What about that? You could adjust the time periods. You could adjust a lot of different things. And we're in a different age than maybe some of this stuff. Maybe you want to do a different way after you see all the evidence of how they come to.
And their presentation answered a lot of my questions. I just was more concerned regarding their contact with Rachel versus the nominating committee and or both.
Absolutely. I think
Because it seemed to me as an observer going through this, that Rachel had the contact with the committee, not the nominating committee. And if the nominating committee is just a figure and not here to follow the bylaws, then the people who voted for them need to realize that. And or we need to change the bylaws or follow the existing bylaws.
So you're saying we didn't follow the bylaws then?
Well, I'm just saying that with the contact and counting the ballots and those sections, it should be a joint effort between Rachel and the nominating committee, not just Rachel getting updates and not just Rachel making the decision. It should be a joint effort.
Rachel sent us weekly updates. We got one day, we got one email per week.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever talk to SBS prior to the election or was it just through Rachel?
I was here. I came to the night we did the video and I have no problem with that.
So I have no problem with SBS, but was all your communication through Rachel to SBS? Or did you guys actually talk to SBS directly?
No, we did not. And honestly, I mean, Rachel sent us the emails, which, is fine. I personally didn't I had no response to any of her emails because it was just numbers. So, and I do think I ask, I'm not gonna be 100% on this, she might get daily updates. Do you know? Okay.
I kind of think that that's how you landed on the weekly ones because that's what she was getting and she agreed to forward those on to the nominating committee. That's what I remember.
I requested them every week.
Okay, yeah, we did get weekly updates.
And I'm not questioning us
As the
at all.
election, or as it went on, as the election period was open. But I didn't have a need. I was fine with the information that we were getting.
So can I go back to the original question? Okay. All right, so it's close. That's one reason.
That's enough.
No other reason.
I think that's plenty. 15 votes. You have no idea, you have no,
I don't know that.
that's right. That's exactly right. That's where you want to look at it.
No, I don't know how many votes it was. I don't have that information. I didn't get a report from SDS. Again, they're not here tonight. I can't ask them. Do you know that? You got the report? What else did they tell you in the report?
Yeah, I saw the report that
What else?
on the nomination or come in that night.
Okay, and the nominating committee would be there. Tell me all who was there. Nominating committee and who else?
Jeannie was there.
Jeannie, Lockley, and who else?
Mr. Wickens or Don and Robert.
So Rachel wasn't there.
No.
Okay. So
So what's that got to do?
Damn it. I'm not done.
I understand.
So those people are present and you're presenting this information. What information was given to you that you felt like warranted the recount? I'm sure that when they told you that it was very close, you said you were kind of thinking you would want to recount, right?
And they offered,
And what did they say?
they offered to send the ballots down.
What else did they say?
I said there's 99.9%.
And there was, so in their opinion, was there a need to recount or not?
Well, you still have no idea what came in.
In their opinion, that night,
They said if it's less than 1%, they do a recount, and if it's more than 1%, not. But they said this is right on the verge that it needed to be, that it's right on the verge of recount.
they didn't do a recount in-house.
No, Don Wickens asked them, and they said that they could not, he wanted them to do it that night. And they said there was no way, that it would be next week before they could do it, and they would charge for it. So we said, how about if you send it down here and we recount?
So why
They said
can't,
the only thing you have to do is pay the postage.
so why can't they recount it?
You've spent enough money already, I think. They said they're gonna charge you again. That's all I've heard about it, is how much money you guys have spent at this election. I see a value of doing it down here for the directors. And I'm okay with being wrong, and I'm hoping that the election is the way it is.
Jay, I have no concern about it being recounted.
Being the way it is. I just think it would be good for everybody to learn a little bit about what they actually do and see the numbers and see how many it's really late, see how many they're confused about. Maybe, like Joe just said, maybe there's some doubt on a ballot. And so if there's a doubt, they toss it out. You know, maybe they scratched and double scratch. We don't know. I just think it would be a good exercise for the board to go through it. You will know more about the whole process.
And I told Marilyn that and Sandy that in the meeting. The whole deal, the exercise, the SBS coming, doing the whole presentation, that was good for everyone. It was. But, you know, you guys endorsed 3 candidates. 2 of them lost. And just coincidentally, those are the only 2 districts we're contesting.
And those were the 2 closest districts.
So that,
Yes or no?
that's the only reason. I don't know. I didn't get the data you did.
Those were the 2 closest.
So Jerry St. John and Andy Schwaring are the 2 that did not win that you guys endorsed, and they're not here. So what does that say? What does that mean?
That means they're not here. I mean, they were notified.
Have you been in contact with them?
I talked to Andy, but I talked to Andy anyway because
Okay.
I do business with Andy.
So he's in support of this. So in other words,
He's not the one that filed the contestment.
yeah, but if some reason this would get changed, he would be the one sitting in here.
Okay.
Is he gonna accept it?
Would he accept it? Once he ran, didn't he?
Do you know that now?
I never asked him, but he agreed to run and he won.
We have conflicting reports as to Jerry St. John's situation. Jeff stated in this room that he had spoke to Jerry and that Jerry was in support.
I don't believe I said he was in support of.
We can watch it back on the video if you would like. I wrote it down.
Okay, if I said that, I misspoke. What Jerry said was it wasn't his place to contest the election. He wanted the board to either follow the bylaws or change them.
That's not what you said in the board meeting.
I apologize.
All I remember him saying was he spoke to him. I don't.
But Jerry is aware. I have talked to Jerry. I would say he is supportive. We can watch it.
Jason, I'm not disputing.
Well,
I,
a lot of times stuff gets said in here is taken as the gospel truth, and it's not always the gospel truth.
and did I just correct myself?
Should we go back to the 5 individuals that are protesting the election? Honestly, I mean, that's the reason we're here, is because they protested it. Jerry's.
That's why I was asking them
Yeah,
why.
but let's go back to the 5 and maybe just get Aaron's input on what we should do moving forward. So if there is a possible way of moving forward.
You're having a hearing. I'm only going to tell you, let me start over. It is not my place to give you any, as a committee, any substantive recommendations on how to decide this matter. I will be happy, though, to talk to you about the procedure that the committee needs to follow and what the next steps are. And when you guys are having a very productive and necessary discussion about the substance of the election protest and the reasons that, the members have asked for what they're asking for. This is all exactly what the committee should be doing. Going forward, I mean, this is the opportunity to hear from the protesters and the candidates. This is the meeting that you've had. Bylaws say that you need to have a meeting, and then you can meet again as a committee to discuss it. And if you need more evidence, I think you have the, authority to receive it and hear that. So ultimately, this committee will decide whether how to proceed.
But they were requesting that ballots to be mailed back, and that is something that we can check off. Mail back, SBS has already confirmed they can do that. Then the Credential Election Committee make the nomination, pass that motion, and get it done, because it sounds like, from what I'm understanding, that is what's going to, not doing that will prevent us from not moving forward, from what I'm gathering.
I would say the answer is you guys can, as a committee, take action that you want to take as long as you have 4 votes in favor of that action. You need 4 votes as a committee to take action. And if you don't have 4 votes on that, then it will go to the full board to take action and consider the issue. Whatever the issue is, in this case, you guys have asked for a recount. So if that is the question at hand, then that would be the question that would go to the full board if the committee doesn't consider that.
If they don't, right. So as those 5, is that what we could do to move forward to close this chapter, get the ballots mailed back for 21?
Did we contest this election in the proper way?
I would be legal.
I mean, with our letter, did we contest it in the proper way?
You submitted sure. I mean, it was timely.
Okay, so is there a importance of reason? I mean, is our reason good enough, or do you have to decide if your reason's good enough, or who makes that decision?
The Credentials and Election Committee makes a decision as to,
I just felt like I was beaten down and like, you don't have good enough reason.
if you came in here and said that you're contesting the election because it was 68.4 degrees out on the day of the election, and you don't think that that's a good time to have an election, this committee could say, we've received your protest and we think it's silly and we're hereby denying your protest. So the committee will make a decision as to whether they want to, what they want to do with your protest.
If the committee didn't know the closeness of the races, then we're exposing that to you of what that closeness is. It may have not been within the realms of SBS's. Everybody has a different level. It's very, very close. So as far as that point, I thought the board knew those numbers. If that's not the case, then the nominating committee did know those numbers. And that was part of our reasoning for contesting the election.
So Suzanne, are you proposing that we would go ahead and vote on
I'm
something?
proposing that we make something that we can close this chapter and move on.
So are we not going to hear from Dale and Brian? As this is,
I'm not contesting the election or the integrity of SBS. I keep saying that. I'm contesting that we need to do something to get this going and moving forward to get it off.
and you're expecting me to make a decision, and I think that everyone should be heard.
I'm giving suggestions as what we can do to move forward.
So do we have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion for SBS to mail the ballots back based upon the information, postage only, the Wickens office, the nominating committee count those and determine those numbers from that.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Is there a plan in place on how the votes are going to be counted? You just throwing out the nominating committee, is this the nominating committee from last year?
And here, that's what I want to know.
Are we on this item, agenda item? Because we haven't,
Well, we're here.
okay.
I'm trying to think of a way for all of us to move forward. Just like if the contract would have just been given to them last January or February, we wouldn't have had to go through this month after month. Maybe that would have nipped this then. Those are the members. That's who we report to. I'm just trying to think if,
5 members out of 6,500, I'll note.
and or other members that I've had discussion with. Not regarding specifically the election. I
I
mean,
agree, but I mean,
you have another proposal other than that to move
well,
forward?
I tried to suggest that the two people
Well,
that
and-
sit behind me would have a chance to say something if they chose, because I think that's the part of the agenda that we're on.
Actually, we're not to that part yet.
Oh,
But Aaron just told me that it would be best if they spoke first.
that's what I was just said 30 seconds ago.
You two think?
Take that motion off and just make.
No, leave your motion.
Make it a suggestion, not a motion. How's
We
that?
can have the discussion if Brian or Dale, whichever wants to go first. Is that where we're at then?
Sure.
Yes,
I mean, all of the people who want to be heard should be heard.
okay. Which one would like to go first?
Just a couple of observations from my perspective. We talk about integrity. And as I had shared with the directors, I observed some behavior that I found concerning at the very least in the fact that prominent members of the nominating committee who are in the February meeting wanted to do away with online ballots, publicly supporting candidates. And then they want to ultimately count the ballots. I see that as a huge conflict of interest. I have spoken to Jerry, who I've known Jerry for a long time. Jerry's a friend. There was a comment made in board meeting a couple weeks ago that I sent him a text during the board meeting, and then I spoke to him subsequently. And obviously, but it tells me if I say it here, you're going to suggest it's hearsay. I think that would be hearsay right there. But Jerry's comment to me was whether it was one vote or whether it was 1,000 votes, the election was over. I accept it. I'm done. Keep me out of it. I don't want anything to do with it. But that's Jerry's conversation to me. I'm hard pressed to imagine that had the election gone in the way that apparently the five of you desired it would go, that any of us would be sitting here right now. I think the precipitating factor is that the results you hoped for and worked so diligently to get did not reveal themselves. It doesn't bother me personally to recount the votes because I have confidence that the outcome will be the same. I don't know what the outcome was. All I know is I sat here in this room and it was announced that evening that I had won. The first communication I got from anyone was Jerry St. John congratulating me. Thanks for the opportunity to run. He's a person of integrity. He's a friend. And I have great respect for Jerry St. John. I don't know if, Jeff, you've apparently spoken to him, or if who has spoken to him. I don't know if he's in support of this, and that's somewhat irrelevant. But should there be a recount, should there be a different outcome, I don't know if you have the confidence right now that he would be willing to accept the seat. I don't know that. But based on my conversation with him, it plants that seed of doubt in my mind, based on what he told me. Again, we're talking about a lot of things that in my tenure on the board, we talked about things that were directed one way. But going back to the point of the cost, as much as I'm sure Aaron is trying to help Decatur County RMC, my guess is her attendance tonight is not gratis, nor will her attendance be gratis going forward for any kind of things we need to do, as apparently SBS has indicated the same. So there's a real dollar associated with it. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do it, but I'm also not suggesting, based on what I've heard, that we should do it.
Anyone else?
I'll respond to that. The nominating committee asked us back in February. We had no idea what the election would be. We all get to support who we want to. This is a free country. But the point was, the nominating committee was trying to save the RMC some dollars. They were trying to do their job. Nobody wanted that to happen. We're sitting here today. We don't recount the votes. You could be sitting here a year from today, the same situation. Nobody has any faith in the situation. Let's take care of that. Let's get the bylaws corrected. What the doubt in there a little bit is, to make sure we all understand that they're clear. We want to be transparent. We've heard this word beat into our brains, and if we're not being transparent, looking forward at 12 months down the road or 24. I hope we lose, and I hope everything's right. But there's so many things in there that leaves a question. Dale, you specifically said, I believe in a meeting, that as a nominating meeting talks, boy, I'd have a tough time signing that paper from them if I never saw anything. That's pretty tough to ask you to sign that, you know? I agree. Let's take that doubt out.
I never saw anything. What do you mean by that? We never saw any ballots. We got handed presentation from it. We were handed some papers and said, here's the numbers.
So I have a problem with saying they never saw anything.
Well, we were handed what we got to see that just said, this is the number here and this is the number for this candidate. We didn't see a ballot.
I'm done.
Just my rebuttal to you, Mr. Smiley, regarding everyone in here absolutely has every right to support any candidate that they want to support. However, when you're into an elected position to represent the REMC, to go out and publicly support a candidate, or in this place, or in this situation, 3 candidates, and the 2 of which the elections don't come back in the way that you've done it, and then you request a recount, I think certainly makes things a little bit more gray, for lack of a better term.
Anyone else? We have a motion. We had a second. We had the discussion. All in favor? Should I raise hands or just do I, or should it be secret?
No, I definitely not secret.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same? Aye.
I opposed,
Okay,
because now I'll go to the full board and we can have open.
I accept. Yes, so the vote is,
And we'll still get the.
3-2. Will be fine. Now, can we do that vote tonight?
No,
Okay, very good. So that.
put it on the agenda for, and I would give notice of that meeting.
Steve, will you take care of that, or do I need to send something?
I mean, I can follow through with it. It's some time constraints. I know in the next meeting, this is very important. I understand that.
Would be the 29th,
Why would I consider a special?
but it needs to be open, correct?
It's a board meeting.
Yes, yeah.
So
So we may need to generate it.
I'll leave that up to you as the acting chairman. So that gets us through 6. We're now to 7, review of survey and ballot contracts. Like I said, I have several questions. Is there any questions from that you haven't already voiced?
Do we need to make a second presentation at the full board? Or
No, I think it'll just go straight to the vote because the full board is here.
I think the board can make that decision.
Okay, very good. Steve, that'll be up to you then. Does everybody on the credential committee want to be involved with the call to survey and ballot?
What's your plan on when would you be doing?
I am very flexible. That's why it's left open. But I would prefer all 5 of us be there with Aaron. But if you make it, Jason, because I know you're busy.
We're just going to be making this decision. Why is the full board not going to be on the call?
To the,
SBS. It's been kicked to the board now, so board meetings are open. They all can come, SBS can come. I should not.
Went to executive session
Well-
when needed.
I mean, it needs to just, let's just watch it out. I agree completely.
so, okay,
It's on the full board. It's not gonna get the vote. It's gonna go to, it's gonna get the recount. Let's at least go through the process. Let's have SBS here. Let's get all our questions answered.
but can we do it with SBS? So it's, one of my goals was to find out, I do not believe every one of these pages are confidential. And I believe it's the board's decision on confidentiality. Isn't that correct?
I'm going to interrupt. Based on my motion made, is the only question we have for SBS, is it correct? You will mail those ballots back with a postage only?
No, I have several
Send it
questions.
to Wickens? Wickens count the ballots like they used to, is that not?
That's not the only question.
Okay. In my mind, that was the only involvement with SBS.
I want the presentation that the nominating committee got the election night
Okay.
from SBS, not, I believe you. I'm not saying that, but I want the full deal. Why are we making a decision about something we don't have all the information
And
on?
in my mind, I just wanted to confirm SBS said all we had to do was pay postage, send it to Wickens. Confirm Wickens does the vote count with the nominating committee, like they did for how many gazillion years? And then move forward. That was my intentions on that.
You sounded just like me talking to SBS. I believe you. I just like.
What's the word always say? Trust but verify.
Full meal deal.
Transparency. All right, bring them in. If these guys can't vote, let's all be big boys here. This is going to the board. These guys can't vote. You know all know how we're gonna vote. So you're gonna get the recount. All right, let's go on.
But my question with where we're at on the agenda, because that part is already done, is the questions concerning the contract. So again, confidential.
I don't have contract questions per se.
Okay. So how do we want to go about, since you don't have questions, do you want to be there or not want to be there?
A notification would be fine and I'll make that decision.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not trying to be smart ass.
No, I am
I
trying.
agree. I have no questions to the contract. I have questions on how we move forward with this group.
I have no problem with you guys sitting in on that either, if that's,
Well, my question is you want to question them if the confidentiality is they're doing or the RMC is doing?
Correct. Well, and from a board standpoint, I thought we had that discussion a year ago that the board has determined confidentiality.
Not when the other party deems their information.
It's a third party contract. That's.
And
So that's,
Correct. But if we find out that SBS doesn't have confidentiality issues, none of this goes away.
it's written in the contract that it says their information needs to be kept confidential. I mean, I don't think that, I don't know.
See,
word
the only thing that
confidential.
I got, and this is what I wanted to find, was the expense, what they charge. Everything else is pretty much standard what they do for anyone. So that's why if you blacken out dollar amounts, is this all can be presented to anyone?
Probably not, but you can ask them.
That's what I'm wanting to do.
So could we just limit that SBS to how much on your example? And also, is it correct you're only going to charge postage to return those ballots? Is that what I'm hearing? Are there more questions in that?
No,
I'm not questioning SBS.
I have more questions for
Okay.
SBS.
Question on that is back to the 30 days that after the election that the balance is what they collect. I would think it would be very important to contact them ASAP to make sure that you are in the process of working on this and that make sure that they don't destroy any ballots that they are collecting.
They keep those for 11 months. It's in the contract.
I'm just not sure if they keep the ones that are late.
Okay.
That was my question.
So do we want to have a conference call with SBS or a Zoom meeting? And you can just meet accordingly, and we wouldn't all have to meet here if you're busy. Would that work best to have a Zoom meeting with the credential committee or the entire board? I'm fine with that.
That's the entire board.
I'm fine with that. Absolutely. So have a Zoom meeting with the entire board. Is there a time period?
Is that just to ask questions?
Yes.
Discovery.
Okay. For the number 8, rescheduling the follow-up meeting would be August 11th.
Well, do you need a follow-up meeting? Or is that the special board meeting? Are you
No,
thinking?
that will be a follow-up meeting for us to have a summary. We have to have a summary within 30 days, but we got it extended because you were,
Well, but now you're moving the question and the decision to the full board. So instead of meeting as a credentials and elections committee, now it needs to go to the full board.
okay.
So that's probably the meeting you should.
And at that
set
point,
up.
we will set up another meeting if needed.
Yes, but I think you should plan to try and make a decision at that meeting.
Okay, very good.
And I would actually recommend that you try and do it within the 30 days.
Okay. Very good.
So maybe try and set it up now.
At
least get a date.
Meeting. I thought we were shooting for the 20th.
Oh, is that July?
Not yet, it's July 29th, but I said that timeframe.
That works. I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
See, the 29th fits within the 30 days, so let's not create enough.
Yeah. Sorry,
But based upon things of that nature, we may have to have a special meeting
or just make it earlier
earlier.
or go really late and have lots of coffee.
There you go. Is everyone okay with that?
Is that all right if all right, I'll talk to you. No, that's my husband. Yes. You would not be really excited if I'm
Wouldn't want to come.
here.
If anybody didn't hear, that's what I was.
We do it to July.
That works good.
It's July 20th. You can, just so we can,
Yeah.
I'm not stepping on toes. I just.
Yes.
She's sitting here.
It is much better.
If she's not available 29th. we can do the
Oh, you're not available.
Well, it's,
So the July 28th.
you wouldn't like you guys.
28th.
I'll get an email out to everybody.
That's ridiculous.
29th, yes. So,
So tentatively, we're going to go for July 28th.
Instead of the August 11th.
We don't know yet.
yeah,
No, I didn't know. Because of here.
I don't think they've decided.
I'm trying to figure out.
And are you going to have that just be a special board meeting? Just do this?
No, it'll be the entire board meeting.
If it-
I will say it's still up in the air a little bit. So we'll get back with you.
That's fine. I would just advise you to make sure that, and plenty of time, but if it's, well, I guess regardless, you'll want to do, make sure you're following 5.03 on notices. Just because it's not the standing meeting.
So the 20th is what you're.
Don't know yet.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
I'm just trying to make it easy. Why?
I
Like the papers.
I'm going through.
I know this will be time.
That's why.
Very cute. It's a hard thing. Would help me, but I can. Well, I think it's on here.
No.
Connie. I knew it was you because I'm for sure. I knew that.
I tried very hard.
Oh.
So,
Did you know?
Well, I think it's so when they.
it's a good relationship.
Yeah, that's out here.
People.
Yes.
Do that.
I did.
Oh, maybe I said, I got them in Denmark, Denver, actually. Where they check out.
It was very indecisive.
Is there? What I asked.
Why I came in and I asked that, I will be represented.
I'm not so sure.
I don't
I
want
would,
to.
I would. It's that.
That's why I say.
Let's have that conversation in private.
And we will, I want to be able to meet.
Ways to turn you into something.
Make sure to turn.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if ever should be pushing the bell.
Um,
There's no like that, everybody's been